All right. Good afternoon. I am very happy to offer a big welcome from the League of Women Voters of Manatee County to everybody attending today. My name is Ginger McCallum, and I serve as chair of the Government Action Team. The Government Action Team focuses on the practice of good governance for Manatee County. Our action team is a strong advocate for public participation and monitors government practices for ethics through observation of public meetings, primarily the Board of County Commissioners. Today's 1-hour meeting will take the mystery out of the advocacy process and give you tools to help you feel confident sharing your viewpoint publicly with elected officials. Although we will not be discussing specific content during the 1 hour today, you will learn that engaging with your elected representatives is not difficult, and they appreciate hearing your point of view. Your elected officials work for you. Let them know what you think. Here's what to expect today. Please put any questions you have in the chat and note if it's for a specific presenter. Holly Kennedy will organize and share as many questions as possible during the Q&A portion, which is after the presentations. Please mute yourself. If necessary, we will mute you to prevent any background noise from disrupting other attendees' ability to hear. This program is the property of the League of Women Voters of Manatee County and may not be reproduced without permission in writing from the League of Women Voters Manatee County. I'm going to introduce you to all of our presenters today before they present. Lauren Aristizabal is a longtime resident of the Sarasota-Bradenton area with 10 years of nonprofit experience, having served a number of social service organizations. She is currently the Director of Grants and Special Projects at the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature. She also chairs the Public Arts Advisory Board to the Community Redevelopment Agency of Bradenton and serves on the Tree and Land Preservation Board of the City of Bradenton. Following her return to the area after earning her Bachelor of Fine Arts from the New Hampshire Institute of Art, Lauren was driven to learn more about local government processes and citizen impact in order to contribute to positive change for our community. She is pursuing her master's degree in arts and cultural management, and she's a League member. Betsy Benac is a Manatee County resident whose county experience began as an assistant planner in 1983 and continued until 1994, when she served as the assistant planning director. In 94, she was hired by Wilson Miller and spent 18 years there, rising to the position of principal and vice president with the company now known as Stantec. In 2012, Betsy challenged a 20-year county commission incumbent and was elected, then re-elected in 2016. During her tenure, she was elected chair of the commission 3 times, serving continuously on the Sarasota-Manatee Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Tampa Bay Area Transit Authority, as well as other assignments. Betsy decided not to seek re-election in 2020 and is enjoying volunteering, family time, and staying aware with what's happening in Manatee County. Misty Servia is a lifelong resident of the Sarasota-Bradenton area, and Misty's career includes 12 years with King Engineering as a certified planner and nearly 18 years as a Manatee County planner. Misty is a past local director for the American Planning Association, State of Florida, and past president of the Gulf Coast chapter of the Florida Planning and Zoning Association. In 2013, Misty received a gubernatorial appointment to the Manatee County Housing Authority. She was elected to the County Commission in 2012 and served until 2020. She currently represents Manatee County with the Metropolitan Planning Organization. A graduate of Florida State University, Misty and her husband, Joaquin, have 3 children. And finally, Stacy Jesse is a homeschooling mom of 4 who spent the past year learning about local government with her children. In the process of trying to understand our local county government well enough to explain it to her kids, she became a regular attendee at county commission meetings, land use meetings, and planning commission meetings. Her children's study of local government is now complete, but Stacy has chosen to remain engaged. She can now regularly be seen at county commission meetings, advocating for smarter development and the protection of our county's agricultural and rural lands with the local nonprofit East Manatee Preservation. Lauren, take it away.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for coming and joining us this evening. Really appreciate having you. And so glad that so many people are interested in really learning how to make their voice heard and really make the best of the resources that we've put out there that are available for y'all. So the League of Women Voters Manatee, the Government Issues Actions team, has developed a guide to making public comments, a resource designed to connect you with the tools and information needed to make your voice heard, really in this local community and beyond. So for this portion of the presentation, we're going to do a high-level overview of the guide and review how to access that resource online. Today, we're going to start by reviewing the public comment process and overview before addressing some of the key components of making a public comment and addressing your audience. So we're going to be going over a brief overview today, as well as the what and why. What are you trying to say and why does it matter to you? The who, when, and how. So who is best positioned to affect the change that you'd like to make or impact the item that you care about? So the purpose of this guide is really to take the mystery out of the advocacy process and give you tools to help you feel confident in sharing your voice and opinion and your viewpoint publicly with the decision makers in government or the school boards, whoever you're trying to engage with, your audience. So engaging with your elected representatives really isn't difficult, and they do appreciate hearing your viewpoint. So without citizen engagement, democracy dies. Again, we really appreciate you all being so interested in projecting your viewpoint and making sure to get your opinions out there. So your efforts to advocate for your point of view really are encouraged and well worth your time. So basic overview of what, why, who, when, and how. What is the topic that you care about and what makes an effective public comment? Why are you speaking? What are you trying to get across and what's important to you? Who do you want to speak with and at what level of government, really your audience? Where are you trying to inspire change? And when do you want to advocate? When is it most appropriate to speak up? Or are there any rules or regulations with when you might need to express your opinion? And how do you make your public comment, whether it's through a public forum, letter, petition, or public comment, as well as some of the additional rules that might fall into that, depending on who your audience is and where you want to make your voice heard. All right, so what and why? Starting with the basics, what are you trying to communicate and why? What is your topic? So start by having a really good understanding of what it is you're trying to express. The reasons behind your point of view, what makes you passionate about this particular interest or topic. It's really important to try to consider alternate points of view as well. And sometimes that'll depend based on your audience, what you might want to bring up or how it impacts a certain person or group. Any agenda that they might have going on that you might want to appeal to. And really considering opposing points of view is going to help prepare you to express the most impactful points when we get to constructing your opinions later on. So try to distill your topic into a few key advocacy points. Being clear and communicable is key. So anything that you can really do to keep your viewpoint clear, well heard, well understood is going to be helpful. So what makes an effective public comment? An effective public comment is going to be really concise and reinforce a few key points. And ideally appeal to your audience as well, depending on who your change leaders are and who you're trying to communicate action to. So whether it's spoken or written, it really does need to be brief, concise, and easily communicable, easy to understand, with the most important lead points at the beginning to make your case early and often, effectively. So there are 3 key components to how you present your comment. So we're going to begin with the lead. This is the most important part of your communication. This is your first sentence, and it needs to be a strong statement about your issue and why it matters to you or to the audience. This is really your attention grabber. It's going to hook someone in to your key issue and really draw them in to listen to what you have to say. Second component is going to be your argument. So you want to follow up your key opinion with facts and figures to help support your lead argument as well. Now, while you want to provide key evidence and support, you don't want to overwhelm your audience with too much information. So keep it succinct impactful and relevant to your lead statement if you can. It should really reflect back to your argument. So the last component that you're going to want to keep in mind is going to be your conclusion. So a very powerful end statement. You want to lead with a clear call to action. You want to tell the change maker, your audience, exactly what you'd like them to do. Why are they listening to you? What action would you like them to take to have an impact on the issue at hand? So whether that's going to be, vote against this, vote for this policy, vote for XYZ candidate, you really want to make that call to action very clear for both your audience and the other people in the room. So we're going to look at a brief example of a call to action and how those parts fall into it. So this is a 2017 example based on healthcare access. We can see the lead statement here at the top is very clear. It expresses your opinion, your point, followed by an argument with a few different data points, nothing too crazy, nothing overwhelming. There's certainly not a citation there, but you want to make your point, bolster your point without being too cumbersome and wordy effectively. So followed by a strong conclusion, right? We're asking someone to do something very specific. We want to let your senators know that you oppose this bill. Be very, very strong with your lead statement, be helpful and explanatory with your argument, and then follow up with a very strong conclusion that effectively is your call to action. Do this to see X change. All right, the who, when, and how. Why are you speaking? Are you representing yourself as a private citizen, expressing your personal opinions as an individual? Are you representing yourself as part of an organization or an advocacy group, or maybe a professional affiliation, whether it's your workplace or a formal membership that you do have? How you're presenting yourself really matters because it's going to affect really the tone, manner, and approach that you take in your communications with your intended audience, and maybe the examples that you bolster your arguments with as well. And a key part to that too is if you are using another organization as part of your comment and you're representing another entity, you might need to ask for permission before you do that publicly. So again, just taking into account, how you're representing your opinion, how you want your voice to be heard, and whose voices are really in the room, right? So whether it's yourself, an individual, personal capacity, just as a private citizen, whether you're part of a larger organization, or maybe there's additional authors that you need to credit for your public comment. Who do you want to speak to? Who is your audience? And importantly, who has the authority to actually create change or impact the situation at hand? Once you determine who your audience is, you can really determine what level you want to reach out to, whether that's local, county, state, or federal. Some examples of some of the entities that you might be able to reach out to that impact your issue: Board of Manatee County Commissioners, local or city town councils, the Florida governor or state representatives, or even the congressional delegation. Other examples would be the school board. So really, who has the power to affect the most change for the issue that you want to see? So there are many different ways on how to advocate, the different channels that you might take to make your voice heard. You can communicate directly with an elected official, whether that's an email or a phone call, to the specific individual or to the larger entity. You can obviously write on the public record comment, and a lot of the time that's available on a government's website, or you can always fill out a public comment card as well. The good old-fashioned in-person comment, you always want to verify the rules and time limits for making those comments though, and do your research ahead of time so that you're well prepared. You can also meet in person with the legislature if you so choose, or make a phone call to your local legislator's office if that's a little bit easier. But do your research ahead of time and do make sure that you have a clear call to action and you understand the point that you're trying to make, ahead of having these meetings, of course. So here are a couple of resources for some of the local entities that we have here, whether you want to reach out to or access some of the Board of County Commissioner meetings. A lot of these meetings are live streamed as they happen, available on public access TV as well. And you can always access recording of previous meetings online, whether that's the City of Bradenton YouTube, or I believe the county has a Vimeo. But we have linked all of those resources on the website as well, in the formal guide to making a public comment. So those resources are available to you at any time. So this is a little bit of information on the county commissioner meetings, as well as the School Board of Manatee. Again, highly accessible. All the information is there and on public record. So if you would like to access it, it's simply a matter of checking out their YouTube channel. And again, we do have links to those resources online as well. All right, so the how. How do I learn the rules for making public comments, and when should I advocate? To be honest, there's so much detail in here, and it depends for the specific entity that you might want to reach out to. So the full information can be accessed through the long form guide on the League of Women Voters of Manatee County website. It's accessible from 2 different places. At the top, from advocacy and training, or advocacy and citizen advocacy information. It's linked in several different places. So once you get to the long form public comments guide, there are very specific information depending on the entity that you're trying to reach out to and the method of communication that you'd like to have with them. So for example, we're going to go to the commissioners page. And you can see that we have contact information linked directly to their site, so you can do your research effectively, find out who your commissioner is, if that's who you're trying to reach out to and contact. Directly into the guide as well, we do have further rules or guidelines essentially for the different entities and different resources available as well, and quite a bit of detailed information. So there are things like link to the public comment forum as well is here. The public speaker sign up form also, if you want to go ahead and put yourself on that list. But do check out the guide and make sure to look for specificities such as a time limit when speaking or things like that, to make sure that you're fully prepared prior to making that public comment. It's available for download as well. But there's an awful lot of information depending on which entity that you're looking to reach out to, and instructions for how to do that, how to best do that and access it, with more information coming soon. So that concludes a brief overview on the broad strokes of the guide to making public comment. The full guide is available here if you'd like to take that down, or just the League of Manatee Women, League of Women Voters Manatee County website as well.
Thank you, Lauren. And Lauren's going to continue to drive the slides, as we say, and Misty and Betsy are up to share their perspective on public comments, making public comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for hosting this great seminar. And I also just want to make one correction. I was not elected in 2012, but rather 2018 through 2022. So just that all of your listeners are clear about that.
Misty.
I'm going to start the presentation just going over some of the basics and talking about when you make comments at a standard board meeting. And then Betsy is going to talk about the quasi-judicial portion. So the first thing on the basics is you want to visit the webpage. And, I'm always thinking of the county commission because that's where I served, but whether it's the school board or FDOT or the MPO, even our legislature, start by visiting the webpage to learn about the process for giving public comment. I always suggest you prepare your comments in advance and also email those comments before you speak. You want the person that you're trying to get your message to see and hear your comments as many times as possible. So if you can email them ahead of time, maybe they miss it and they don't read it, but then they hear you at the meeting. So just as many ways as you can get it to them is good. And in that same vein, have a copy of your comments for each official. If you're going to speak in person, hand them out. Your public officials are very busy and they don't always understand all of the public's concerns right away. So the more often you can get it in front of them, the better. I always add dress appropriately. There are a few people who show up in shorts looking like they're going to mow their lawn or maybe have a day at the beach. And it's just disrespectful, I think, in a formal meeting at any of these different agencies. So dress appropriately, dress in business attire, sign up to speak. There are different ways to do that depending on who you're speaking in front of. Most agencies now allow you to sign up online, but not all of them. But make sure that you request to speak in advance so that you are called on in that order. And then know how to recognize the person who's leading the discussion. At the Board of County Commissioners, it's either Madam Chair or Mr. Chairman. Next slide, please. Thank you. You've already heard this, be succinct and respectful. The last thing you want to do is ramble on, and you are always limited to a certain amount of time. So the clearer you can be, the easier people are going to get your message. Pictures and videos are great. If you are able to include a short video or pictures, I think that helps to tell the story a lot better. Just remember that time frame. I remember one time an environmental group coming to speak to the board, and they had these great little video clips, but the video clips went on so long and the chairman allowed them to go that they started losing people. People started tuning out. So just make sure they're short and brief little videos. Always start with the facts and then present your opinion or your views on the facts. And remember that when you're there, you're speaking to the board. That's your audience. It's not the people who are there from the public. It's not the staff. So make sure that you're always addressing your comments to that board of officials. I think it's always a good idea to come prepared with ideas or actions, not to just complain, because there are so many problems and challenges for your officials up there that, and the staff, and they just don't always have the time to come up with good solutions. So if you can present a couple of good ideas, it's going to be very helpful to them. And then follow up after you make comments. So let's say you emailed your public official, you went down to the meeting and you presented your comments and you handed them out. Maybe in a day or two, follow up, send them an email and ask them if they've had time to think about it, or give them a call. But don't let that issue die, because it can easily get shoved away for more important things. Things to avoid. Okay. So when you are making public comment, you never want to be political. So just leave all the politics out of it. And you want to rely on the facts. You don't ever want to use hearsay. So-and-so told me that this was going on. No, that's not good enough. Make sure you have the facts. Aggression. We shouldn't even have to talk about this, but I will tell you that both Betsy and I have seen many angry people come in front of the board and be very aggressive. And you lose people if you're feeling very emotional and you do that. So no matter how you're feeling inside, try to remain calm. No personal attacks. So we never want to attack, especially board members, although I understand why some of you may want to. But please refrain from personally attacking anyone. Clapping or cheering is not appropriate in a board meeting of any kind. So remember that as an audience member and as a speaker, they're trying to establish a record, and clapping and cheering is frowned upon. And remember, this is not a place to protest. Giving public comment is very important, and protesting is too, but take your protest out to the street or someplace else. Don't come in with signs or view this opportunity as a place to protest. And then finally, remember, you can't ask questions when you're giving public comment or at least you shouldn't expect an answer. This is one-way communication. It's a time for the public speaker to get their message to their elected officials. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about just standard board meetings. And when there's a standard Board of County Commissioners meeting, you can speak as a member of the public on future agenda items, anything that the board may consider in the future. So remember that that's the context that you have to speak on, and almost anything could be a future agenda item. So this is the link that I've provided here, that if you wanted to submit public comment ahead of time, you could do it. And I also suggest that you send it to all commissioners, not just your district commissioner. Make sure they all get it, because it's important that they all hear it. All right, so we have an example that I've provided under here. And let's, take our animal shelter, for example. Many of you have probably heard that recently there were volunteers who were fired. I'm not sure how you get fired from a volunteer position, but they were asked not to come anymore as a volunteer to our shelter. And they were let go. And that really upset a lot of the volunteers who had been spending their time, many for a lot of years, hearing that their services were no longer needed. Not only the people who volunteered, but those of us that are happy that there are volunteers helping to carry the big load of animal welfare. So if you're going to speak on a topic like that, it would be nice to go to the board with your thoughts on a solution. And the next slide, if you'll just go to that, just has some examples. Explain why. You might suggest the volunteers need to hear why they were let go. Transparency in government is important. People want to understand. You might suggest that, the county establish clear expectations and rules for the volunteers. I don't think they had those, and if they did, they didn't follow them. Another suggestion might be have a process of offering a warning to a volunteer if a rule's not followed. This is free labor for these volunteers to go there and do the things that are necessary to help the facility run. So suggest having a process that everyone can understand. And a volunteer coordinator might be a good idea. Somebody who could have regular interaction with these volunteers. And then it's always nice to suggest positively recognize these people. I mean, they're spending hours every week coming to help our community animals that need help. And then regularly ask the volunteers for input to improve their experience. So if you went to present your thoughts on this matter, come prepared with a solution that's going to help the situation. Okay, and that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Betsy.
Thanks, Misty. That was a great example. I do want to point to that there's probably a lot of questions as to, when do I get to speak on a future agenda item? What makes it a future agenda item? All of this is pretty well laid out in a resolution that is actually on the county's website, the procedures for the BOCC meeting. It's a PDF that you can pull up on the mymanatee.org, basically what Misty just had up on the screen. And I would suggest anyone that is preparing to go to a county commission meeting, read over that. You don't have to pay a lot of attention about how the chair is elected, things like that. But I think it's very helpful if you are familiarize yourself with what kind of meetings, what the time frame is, what you'll be able to speak to. And it does clarify, what is a future agenda item? And basically it's anything that might reasonably come before your Board of County Commission to take action. So, you have the opportunity to speak to people. So I would suggest that you familiarize yourself with that ordinance. One of the most common places that we see at the county commission meetings for public comments is something called a quasi-judicial. That is typically a land use decision that comes before the county commission. Quasi-judicial, what it actually means is you sit as a judge, right? So the role of the county commission is to sit as a judge. So there's very, very specific rules that you have to follow. And these rules are laid out in statute, right? So when you're there speaking to the board about something that you are probably very passionate about, it could be an application that's in your neighborhood, it could be something that you just care about. You have to recognize that as quasi-judicial, it's a little bit different than just a policy issue that's coming before the board. The board is acting as a judge, so you have to help them make this decision. And the objective is help create the record. This is, like we said, a legal process. And the terminology that is used is competent and substantial evidence. What does that mean? What it means is that what the board has to consider is competent and substantial evidence. So it does help if you have expertise and you can prove that you have expertise in the issue that you're bringing forward. That doesn't mean that you as a neighbor don't have a role in this hearing. You absolutely do have a role, but you have to recognize that that is what they have to rely on when they make their decision is competent and substantial evidence. So you can use the comprehensive plan, you can use the land development code to help you understand what the issues are, but all of that is laid out in the staff report. And that gives you an outline of what the relevant information is. It also is required that you have to be there in person. It isn't just written comments this time. Though everything Misty said makes a lot of sense, to go ahead and go through those steps, prepare yourself, be ready to go there and speak, but sending your comments in ahead of time, it just makes a lot of sense to do that. So this is a little bit different, Misty. Okay. And the timeframes are different. There is an opportunity. Okay. So there's an opportunity for you to represent a group of people in a quasi-judicial hearing, but you have the comprehensive plan and land development code to support your argument. And you're considered a layperson, right? You're not an expert. You're not going to be an expert in water quality. Perhaps you are. If you are, be sure to say you are and say what your expertise is. You're maybe not an expert in traffic, but you can go ahead and bring that up as an issue because we all do experience traffic when it comes from a new development. So you can give your own personal situation and how it affects you. The example here, you leave the subdivision in the morning, but you can't get out. You don't have a light, let's say, you can't get out on the road. The traffic has increased substantially. It's probably backed up by a traffic study anyways, and says that, but you can say how that affects you as a citizen. What does that mean? How does this affect your child as they're trying to get to school? What is the concern? You know, maybe they can't ride a bike. They can't, maybe there's no sidewalk. Those kind of things are going to be considered, hopefully, by your county commission when they are looking at these quasi-judicial land use decisions. Misty put this up here, and I think this is a great point. Main Street can't support any more development, so the board must deny the project. That's not how it works. It is not how it works. The board has a role to play in determining whether or not an application meets the comprehensive plan and the land development code. Just saying we can't, you know, oh my gosh, we cannot stand having another mini warehouse. I don't understand. Why do there have to be so many? Why do we need another Chick-fil-A? Why do we need another gas station? Why do we need a car wash? That's not the role of the county commission to determine what types of private businesses are going to be put in place. The role of the county commission in making a decision, and you're there advocating for your position, but you have to understand that just saying it's ridiculous to do this is not going to help them to make a decision. You're going to have competent, substantial evidence, and you can say, this does not work here because there's inadequate roads, there's inadequate services, maybe there's no sewer service in the area, maybe there's no water service, maybe there are no schools. You can find out from a letter, maybe the schools don't have capacity. You've got to have very specific examples in order for them to be reasonably considered by the Board of County Commissioners. Just say no doesn't work. Okay. So, you know, one of the other things I do want to mention, and Misty and I are willing to stay online and talk about this, and I don't know if it comes up later, but it is the legislative items that are going to come up before the board. So a legislative item is very different than a quasi judicial item, right? A legislative, and Misty, tell me if this isn't a later slide, or I just don't have it on my phone. Okay. All right. Well, I'll go into it just briefly. The legislative issue is a comprehensive plan amendment is a legislative issue. It's different than a quasi judicial. Okay. It is not a rezone. It is a change to the comprehensive plan of Manatee County. The state requires a comprehensive plan. The state has standards for what has to be in a comprehensive plan. But when you appear as a citizen to speak to a comprehensive plan amendment, and there's many of them coming forward, you just can look online and see what's coming forward as far as comprehensive plan amendments. It's a totally different situation than quasi judicial. The comprehensive plan represents the policies as adopted by your county commission to represent you as a citizen. Okay, so it's good to know the difference. You as a citizen can go to those meetings and say, my expertise is limited, but I think it's important that you need to know that I do not stand with you on this issue. I have researched it. I have found that it doesn't make sense in Manatee County. As a citizen of Manatee County, I'm asking you as my representative. I'm asking you to represent me and make sure that you stand with my opinion and what's best for my family. So as stated here, who stood out? It's people that are respectful, that are, you can be passionate, but you need to be respectful. You can say where they will ask you what your address is. You can say what district you are, what district you live in. Again, keeping the emotion down. I've never been really good at that, quite frankly, but it's important to keep it in check. Try to smile. Try to, that it helps if they know that you're not out there attacking them, that you in fact are thinking about what's best for Manatee County. Is hopefully they are, right? Hopefully that's their job and they're representing you. So smile, tell them that you think this is important, why you think it's important. All right, and this is what we were talking about. I was talking about it, the comp plan change that's coming. And again, a comprehensive plan change is laid out very specifically in Florida statutes, what it is. There's a whole lot less information than there used to be, but a comprehensive plan change to something like what is coming up right now, for example, wetland buffers. This is coming up very quick. The law requires that in a comprehensive plan amendment, the planning commission, who is acting as your local planning agency by state law, that's the role they have to play. They will consider it. They will make a recommendation to the county commission. If the county commission decides that they want to change the comprehensive plan, they will submit the changes to the Department of Economic Opportunity, which is at the state level. Theoretically, there's a review. There hasn't been much going on at the state level. They really just check a few boxes to make sure you're meeting the statutes. And then it comes back to the board for adoption. So these are different than a rezone. The same standards apply for how you're going to want to address them, but it doesn't have to be competent, substantial evidence, but you don't want to go up there and just say no. So let me give you an example on the wetland buffers. I happen to have an opportunity because the county had a meeting. I don't know that it was particularly well advertised. It's a group called the Planning Task Force. It's a group that Misty and I both have sat in on, and hopefully some of you, I know Stacy attended this meeting. And it was an opportunity there were some 70 people on board, listen to a consultant talk about what changes they're bringing forward to the wetland buffers of the comprehensive plan. Basically what it is they're eliminating all of the requirements to have a wetland buffer and have mitigation for wetlands. I really appreciated the meeting because they let me make comments and they let me tell them that I don't agree with that. I don't agree that deferring to the state is a good idea for handling the wetland buffers. Our wetland buffer standards have been in place since 1989 when citizens had a huge amount of input into the comprehensive plan. That was the last major update to our comprehensive plan. was back in 1989. The law requires it be updated every 7 years, I believe, Misty, unless that's changed. So to have this new change coming forward as a comprehensive plan, this was a big issue. I'm glad that we had this opportunity to at least listen to the consultant. It's interesting to me that the county has hired a consultant to do this, since basically his job is just to strike out all the language that's in the comprehensive plan. Doesn't seem to me to be that big of a deal for a consultant, but that is what's going on. So I don't know what, I've been following my time. Hopefully somebody can cut me off if I'm talking too much about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Betsy. Let's defer the rest of this conversation till after the formal workshop is over, and then we can talk this as long as you and Misty and anybody else wants to stay on the line. Sure. Yeah, so we'll hear from Stacy Jesse, who is our homeschooling mom who found herself to be a citizen advocate. Stacy, you want to tell us a little bit about what that was like for you, kind of in light of everything we've been talking about?
Yeah, so my name is Stacy Jesse, and I have 4 kids who have probably attended more county commission meetings now than most people in Manatee County. And so it just started for us. We were going to learn about local government, and then we were going to go to state government and national government. But we spent, almost 9 months this past year just learning about local government, because not only is it really interesting, but there's a lack of good information about it. You want to know the 3 branches of government, or how your federal government works. It's really easy. But you try to create a chart that shows the county administrator and your county commissioners, it's really kind of complicated, and trying to find good resources we found to be kind of difficult. So we've kind of really learned by jumping in this year. So the first time I attended a meeting was with my kids, and it was about a year ago. And I got really lucky. I'd asked online because I didn't know anyone. Now I know all sorts of people I can reach out to have questions, but I hadn't lived in Manatee County more than a couple years, but my kids and I were just going to show up at this meeting. And so we'd watched one online. So I'd recommend, if you've never sat down and seen a meeting, that's a good place to start. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but watch how it unfolds at the beginning, how they start with future agenda items, the consent items, kind of get a feel for it. So I had done that, but I was still kind of confused. You couldn't see the audience. What do I wear? Is it okay that I bring my kids? Just really basic questions that I wasn't sure on. So I reached out just on an online forum and Facebook to a couple different places, and they kind of gave some feedback. And that was when someone was like, well, don't just attend the meeting, you should speak. And I was like, well, I don't have anything to speak on. And someone said, well, you can talk about anything for future agenda items. So I used my 3 minutes during future agenda items, and I shook like a leaf the whole time and just explained that my kids and I were there, and that we would love to see more resources so families like mine and just other citizens could have an easier time connecting to their local government. And it started as innocent as that. And my kids had done a video on the park that was in Misty's district that they were naming. That was the first meeting we were at. It was a very lively meeting. At the time, I didn't realize how political it was going to get. My kids thought it was the greatest thing ever. They argued over a county administrator's salary and then got into it with the park. But it was a really great experience. I mean, the commissioners are, I think, I didn't go in there with an agenda, and certainly, I was very naive, I think, when we walked in, and all of the commissioners were very welcoming, kind of encouraged my kids to get up there. Even my kids ended up introducing the little video they had done. And I think that if you are respectful, even I go in there now, and, a couple of commissioners know we're going to disagree from the time I walk in the door, but we're respectful with each other. And I found that makes all the difference. If you don't go in there, looking to accuse. I really wish that what Misty and Betsy just presented had been available a year ago. It would have made my life so much easier. I was looking at some of the things Misty said, and like, oh, I definitely learned the hard way. So many of those things. I think one of the biggest things people don't realize is that you only have 3 minutes most of the time, unless you've gotten 5 signatures. So you have 3 minutes to get up there and say something. And I see a lot of people coming in with an issue that they want addressed right then, and they're trying to question the commissioners and waiting on a response, and they don't dialogue, you don't get that. So I think that's a really good thing to be aware of just going in. Another big thing that I would say, Misty mentioned, you should email ahead of time. And I think that's huge. Now that I kind of work with a nonprofit that's pretty vocal, if I don't email, we'll post something online and we'll make sure that all the commissioners see it. But another thing I'd add is that even after we speak, sometimes we need to follow up. And so I do try to reach out after the meetings, generally an email to each commissioner separately. And especially if they've made promises, sometimes they're like, oh, hey, we'll try to work on that. We didn't realize traffic there was an issue. We're going to get a study done on that. And so I do recommend that if you speak on something, don't be afraid to follow up. One thing I continue following up on is call-in comments. We're no longer allowed to call in and give comment. And I think at 3 different meetings now, the commissioners have heard public comments requesting that people be allowed to dial in again. And they've said that the attorney was going to work on something and still nothing has come back before the board. So that's one of those things that I'll give it a month and then I'll send an email and say, hey, have we made any progress on this? And then if I don't hear back, I'll go in. I guess what's one of the big things that I would recommend, looking back now at what I've learned, is to be careful the way you approach things. It's so easy to get up there and tell them, you know, you're doing it wrong. But I find that you get to a meeting and those agendas are huge sometimes. And there will be something on the agenda that the commissioner in my district hasn't had time to look at. And so sometimes just being able to email in advance and then show up there and say, hey, I noticed this agenda item, whatever. And I had questions about what was written in the staff report. And I don't understand this. I'll be, I know you can't answer me now, but I was just hoping that maybe someone could, you know, put eyes on this and clarify it for me. And so I think sometimes just creating that awareness for the commissioners who really do have a lot on their plates has made a difference. I really prefer to go in person. I do email, but I think that our commissioners need to see a face to these issues. They're making big decisions. And oftentimes, you know, there's not a face, and I like them to see the faces of the people those decisions affect. And so I think it is really powerful when their constituents are coming in there and they're showing up. But I've also seen it be really effective. Myself and others have written into commissioners and say, hey, this is on the consent agenda, but we have questions about this. And oftentimes commissioners will pull things off the consent agenda. So I think that citizens have an important role to play, those who are able to pay attention, because there is just so much happening in our county that I'm sure it's very difficult for them to be aware of all things at all times. So if there's something that you have information on or are concerned about, I find that, you know, if we're not attacking, they're certainly willing to consider it. Another thing I'd recommend is sometimes they don't have all of the information. You know, they get their staff reports and often that's all they've read. One of the things that we did a couple months ago was we mentioned a water facility study that had been done. And I don't think any of the commissioners were aware of it. And since then, we brought it up, we used a PowerPoint to show it. It's really, they went back and they reviewed it and there's been updates, but sometimes you draw attention to things that maybe they've missed. And I think that's really powerful. My biggest faux pas recently, though, was I didn't come prepared with something printed out and I wanted to show something and I tried to use my phone. So I would say, do know you can't, your phone and your iPad, you can't hold them up and put them on the screen. So there are little rules that I continue to make mistakes and then I get scolded. But, you know, the chair was really nice. It's like, actually, ma'am, you can't put your phone up there. So I think sometimes you learn things the hard way. But I do think know the rules. And once you understand the rules, it's a lot easier to play the game. So.
Thank you, Stacy. Clearly, Stacy has gone down the rabbit hole and really learned what it takes and started from a point, as she said, of you know, not knowing much. And I think, Stacy, some of the information you said is probably raising questions in people's minds that we will hear about, that we'll be happy to answer. So thank you very much. You know, I remember seeing you at the meetings with your kids and just thinking what a great way to teach your children and yourself as well. So thank you. Holly, do we have any questions in the chat?
We do. We have a couple of chat questions. One was related just to all the links that we've provided, and particularly the ones that Betsy and Misty put up on their slides, and whether or not how they would be available. So we want to make sure that they're in our documentation on our own website. And also I think
yeah, we can
will
add we're going to show the website that the video is going to be in. We will add that. We'll make sure we add in all those links too.
Great.
Yeah. So
And
a
then-
lot of the links are in the document that Lauren, Lauren showed the website, and lots of links. And then also the county pages that Misty and Betsy referred to. I believe most of them are in our document. If they're not, we'll find a way to put them there. And we're happy to spend time with folks, showing the county website and kind of wending our way through it. There's a lot of information there, and information that's important, but as Stacy said, it can be really difficult to figure out what you need and where it actually resides. So sorry, Holly, go ahead.
No problem. The other question has to do with, and it's been answered in a version, so I'm paraphrasing the question. And it's about what is the most effective way to reach the commissioners. So for example, you've said, email and then come and present and then follow up. Well, what happens if you just email and you're not able to actually present? And or you're coming in as an individual, do the commissioners have a point of view about whether or not you're just coming in representing yourself and your family, or you're coming in as part of a group? Do numbers matter when you're coming up? Maybe it's your tone and manner and respectfulness and your concise argument, but maybe it's also because there's another 60 people in the room with you, or 20 people. And so the question really is, what is effective? And if you can't get there in person, what works? And the questions
Okay,
for Betsy, it doesn't matter, I guess. Thanks.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and go. And I listened to this group, and of course I presented many years to the county commission before I was a county commissioner. And you really don't have to be an expert in everything, right? I mean, you're a citizen, so the commissioners represent you. So you reaching out as an individual should be effective, right? You're their constituent. If you have a group, it doesn't, that helps. Safety in numbers, strength in numbers. It certainly helps if you have more. But I would say send an email. They get zillions of emails, but they have assistants now that help them to go through that. Follow up with an email, send more emails, say I haven't heard back. I think most of the commissioners that have any kind of a business background know that you're supposed to respond to an email, right? Supposedly within 24 hours. That's what you're supposed to do. I'm sure they don't always do that. They're busy, but don't let them off the hook. Email them again and say, I just want to know that you got my email. Would you like to discuss it? Maybe a phone call. I know some commissioners in the past only want to talk over the phone. They didn't want to talk by email, whether they didn't want to have a record or they just thought it would clarify things more. So to be open to that, a telephone conversation is sometimes a really good way to make sure that you're understood and have a really good conversation. So I would suggest both email and phone if you can't get to a meeting.
Yeah, and I'll just add, those are really good comments, but I would try every way possible to reach them. They all have county issued cell phones, which you can call. I will call or text their personal phone too, which most of that stuff is available, or call their aide. If you're not getting a response, make sure their aide knows that you've been trying for a certain amount of days and you need to hear from them. And somebody asked, does it matter if you're representing a group or not? In a quasi judicial matter, I will say it's never supposed to be a popularity contest. But I think realistically, the more red shirts you have behind you, the bigger the impact. But that's not how it's supposed to work.
One more question. Thank you. Another question that has come up is whether or not Misty and Betsy feel or think that petitions are an effective way of communicating.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. I definitely think they are, but you got to be careful about how they're presented. You have to be really clear what you're asking for in the petition. You can't just say we're all against this and we all signed it, so we're all against it, and you got to vote against it. Again, it's kind of the same standards as the comments, right? You want to know why, you want to know what the evidence is. So yes, if you have people signing on, I think is effective if you have a lot of them. For example, the Suncoast Waterkeepers have done a petition. Well, their petition is accompanied by information that explains why they think that this is really a bad thing for the board to vote on. So I think it's the same thing, but certainly, more and more addresses, people in districts, so that the commissioners can look and see what district these signatures are coming from. I mean, they're subject to voters. I mean, they get voted in, right? So they're supposed to be representing the public that voted them in. So definitely, I think petitions can be helpful.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Holly, is that it for the questions?
There is a question that's come in that's quite technical, which the best I can do is read it because I'm not entirely sure I can paraphrase this. And I am not sure if so can I go ahead and do that and we'll see if it's worth discussing at this point?
Yeah, or why don't we're getting right down to the wire. Why don't we pose it after
we're
we
finished?
end
Okay,
the
that's great.
session and, we can see if we have some time to produce
Thank
it.
you.
So, okay. So thanks everyone for your presentations, questions and participation. The Zoom will be added to our website for public viewing. It'll be on the League of Women Voters Manatee website. Alice, I don't know if you're going to share the link or share your screen to show it. But while we're figuring that out, I would make a plea for people who are interested in being part of our Observer Corps. We watch the regular meetings, observe the regular meetings of the Board of County Commissioners, plus some other meetings from time to time when there seems to be a hot topic. And if you're interested in being part of our Observer Corps, please reach out to me. Holly's going to put my email address in the chat, I think. And oh, I didn't send it to her. Hold on, let me send it to her. There you go. So we're looking for that. We also wanted to, we can stop recording now. Thank you, everybody.